Ta-da!
Yep, we're here.
We were here last night.
We were here. Now we're here again.
Here we go.
Yeah, we were here last night, but neither of us felt like doing it.
Well, we figured that so many of you were watching
the State of the Onion.
The State of the Onion. So here we are tonight.
And who are we, by the way?
I'm the last time I looked, I'm Joe Rao, Fios 1 News, Lower Hudson Valley, and you are?
And I'm Joe Cioffi, Fios 1 News, Long Island, and Fios 1 News, New Jersey.
There you go.
And a good evening to all.
See?
What's that?
That's how I knew who I was.
A 1905 custom made? Really?
Well, back in 1905 they had good...
That's a 1905... That jacket was made in 1905?
Yeah, well...
No, seriously, come on.
That's why it's so gray. No.
I'm just wondering. I'm just, you don't know. You might be, it's retro. It's very nice.
Whatever. Thank you.
All right. So, anyhow.
Where are we?
Where are we? We're on it's a Wednesday night.
Oh, happy
and
anniversary,
raining.
by the way.
The Blizzard of 78.
41 years. Hard to believe, huh?
I know. It's a long time ago.
This man was the man who announced to all of New York, you couldn't do that now. Do you realize?
No, because it's all automated.
No, not that, but it's the fact that the station itself has been off the air now for months.
Oh, they haven't brought it back on
They still haven't fixed it yet.
Oh, wow.
Well, KWO35, and this man, back in 1978, on the night before, reading the summation that was written by then one of the lead forecasters, Joe Harrison.
It was Joe Harrison. Yes,
right.
It was. God rest his soul. Yes, it was Joe Harrison.
And you said this could be... we had a big snowstorm 17 days earlier that dumped about 15 inches of snow on New York City. And you said, or at least Joe Harrison wrote in the summation that you read over the air that night, that if it reaches only part of its potential, it should easily match the storm of January.
And that broadcast, I know you have a copy of it. I have it somewhere at home too on my computer. It is floating around on the internet someplace. I'm sure it's somebody has it somewhere. Or a link someplace.
Well, maybe jump up and down, because back in the day I was a big snow weenie or snow lover, and I think you were jumping up and down too.
Oh, sure. Well, we've had, the funny thing is, because that really came during a time where big snowstorms were so few and far between, and that continued, by the way, through the 80s and 90s, and then whatever decadal shift that we had that brought us into the last 18 years, and we've talked about this many times, but since then we've actually had some pretty big snowstorms. I don't know if it rivals that one in terms of the scope and the coverage, as far as snow extending down as far south as it did down to Virginia, if I remember correctly, and then 40 and 50 inch amounts in parts of Rhode Island.
Rhode Island, yeah, that's right. The thing that blew my mind, though, about that particular storm, Joe, is that up until that moment in time, whenever we had any kind of a potential snowfall, it was always, it never... never a foot or more of snow off the bat. That was
4 to 6. That was, I think, the most I ever heard the forecast was the old heavy snow warnings, which they don't have anymore. Right. But it was 4 to 6. That was such a big deal on a couple of events. That we were going 4 to 6.
And I remember a mutual friend of ours, of course, you actually worked with him for a while, Alan Casper, who I still consider to be probably one of the greatest synoptic television weathercasters in the New York metropolitan area.
Oh, I mean, no question.
And they put him outside, I think, to report on the initial shot of snow that came in, and he actually said on the air that going back over the years, much as he hated to admit, there had been snowfalls where you call for 4 to 6 inches, and then you wind up upping, and then you've lined up with 12 to 18, but flat out, he said here, a foot or more. Some areas may even reach 20 inches. The saliva was coming out of my mouth at that time.
That was a 2-day event. And Joe, we got the website. We can pull the maps up.
This was an amazing storm that never, ever would have been able to be forecasted in the 1940s or 50s. And basically what it was a very significant push of upper-level energy that came across the Great Lakes and grabbed onto a relatively weak offshore storm system literally dragged it back to the coast, screaming and kicking, and the storm intensified along the way. And then the storm went vertical, as we call it. The upper level low and the surface low became vertical with each other. The storm slowed to a crawl south of Long Island.
Well, on this side, Joe, can we go back to 1978?
Oh, yeah, you can go back to 1978.
I'm on the wrong... What am I on, Source or...
Well, you can't... Not U.S., but it's got to be the other one.
Well, which other one?
There are two different... Damn it, I wish I had my glasses now.
It says North America region, right?
Reanalysis.
Right. This is 1851 to 47.
All right, then there's got to be another one. Hang on for a second.
Okay.
Even though I'm blind. Okay, let's try that. And what years are we seeing here?
1851 to 1947.
All right, then it's got to be
the other one.
Then it's got to be the other one.
Okay, there you go. I got it.
All right,
you got it.
See it?
Yeah, so we can actually bring this up. So let's go to 78, and let's go to February, and we'll bring up February 5th, and then I will bring it up on the window so for everybody could see. So this is kind of what the maps look like. It's a little simplified here, but the colors are the jet stream, and of course you've got the low, low there in Wisconsin, and you had a low that was well offshore at this point, and high pressure just kind of enveloped around it.
Right.
So we'll go to the next one and watch the progress. So this was at 1 a.m. February the 5th, then 7 a.m. you see that low, and the pressures were actually pretty high, Joe. It was a 1024 low there that was sitting up near Louisville, so it kind of was odd in a way. You would have thought that it would have meant for a really strong storm. So now here's where you start to see that development to the coast. Pressure starting to fall, but still it's a high pressure map. You have this huge 1050 cold high that's set up over north of Minnesota. And now we'll go to the 6th. And there you have the beginnings of the coastal low east of the Delaware coast, and the big high, the tightening pressure gradient. And
look at that.
Yeah, I mean, it really just wrapped up right in the ideal spot for for a big snowstorm for here. And you don't really see this too often. Maybe the Boxing Day storm to some degree was... had a kind of a similar setup in that the way the low just sort of, it seemed to almost come out of nowhere. You could follow, but it did evolve in a different sort of fashion. So now we're at 1 a.m. on the 7th, and the storm has actually not moved very much at all.
Right, and thunder and lightning was being reported at that time also, with a very strong tightening pressure gradient there, and it just didn't move. It just sat there during the overnight hours and dumped more snow. I remember, Joe, I spent the better part of the afternoon shoveling out. I was living in Throgs Neck back then, shoveling all of the snow out.
As was I.
As best I could, and then going to bed, and then waking up the next morning, and it looked like I had done absolutely nothing, because that was the second round that came on through during the overnight hours and on into the early part of the day on the 7th.
Well, clearly the upper air pattern, Joe, that we have now resembles nothing like this.
No.
And not at all. And the snow lovers are, kind of upset about this.
Well, we're getting here in the lower Hudson Valley, as just an example of what we're seeing right now, we're getting rain. When this is all over...
I got the surface map up. Let me put the radar so that we can see the rain on the radar
now. When this is all over, at least up in the lower Hudson Valley, and a good part of the tri-state area, anywhere from a half to maybe, in the most case scenario, 3/4 of an inch, which could have translated into a rather significant snowfall, except it's just too darn warm.
No cold air.
No cold air to work with.
There's a lot of freezing rain in the eastern half of Massachusetts and into parts of southern New Hampshire and Vermont, and then there's some snow up in eastern New Hampshire going into Maine, of course. And a sign of where we're headed as we head into the month of February. We actually have a severe weather. We're at a slight risk of severe weather, and it looks like we do have some thunderstorms firing up in parts of Tennessee.
Right.
So this is all part of the next system. It's going to be another another sizable winter storm for the Great Lakes. With where the upper trough is, Joe, this has been really kind of a bonanza for the Great Lakes. Chicago's is going to be just out of it, but just to the north of them through Wisconsin into Minnesota and Iowa. In fact, I'll bring up the let me bring up the warnings and advisories, because that really kind of tells you how
also,
widespread the storm is.
Big void, so to speak, in precipitation that we're going to be moving into tomorrow. And as I just noted with our evening news anchor Mike Gilliam, I said tomorrow's going to be, in a word, drab. It's going to be kind of a cloudy day, but there's not going to be much of any precipitation to deal with, and the temperatures, admittedly, not. They're going to be above normal. They should be around 40, and they'll be in the 40s tomorrow, maybe even close to 50, and we're going to get even higher than that for Friday.
Blizzard warnings up for parts of western Minnesota, eastern parts of the Dakotas. We've got winter storm warnings all around northern Minnesota, back across the western Great Lakes. Winter weather advisories up back down in the central and even parts of the southern plains. Ice storm warnings up. This is like the third day in a row there's been ice storm warnings up somewhere in the middle part of the country. And today it's southeast Kansas, much of the northern third of Missouri, and into southeastern Iowa. It's just yesterday it was up more near Chicago and northern Illinois and southern Wisconsin. I forgot where it was the day before. I think it was up in northern Michigan. So the West, which was getting pounded for so long, Joe, has gotten kind of quiet, which is good.
Right.
So let's go through the. Let's bring up let's go to the models, I guess, and we'll take a look. I went for a chance for some a period of snow Sunday night into early Monday morning. But we'll just take them through the NAM first, and then I'm going to switch it here.
Right.
So tonight's rain is going to be moving out fairly soon, probably during the early morning hours. Not much for tomorrow. Thursday night into Friday morning, got this warm front comes up, cold front follows.
One thing about tomorrow night, and I'm sure we'll both hit it hard tomorrow night or tomorrow afternoon, is the fog. I really think tomorrow night is going to be a night where we're going to be talking about, areas of dense fog, maybe down to 1 mile or less, or even near zero for places, as this push of warmer air overrides the colder air that's over, and we'll get some spotty areas of light rain tomorrow night as well.
Right, and much like yesterday, where it warmed up, even though the cold front had gone on through, you had the west wind. I think the same will probably hold true for Friday. Cold front goes by. I think we might briefly get to about 60 or so, and then it'll just start to fall off after that into Saturday morning.
Right, I could see wind gusts on Friday to 30 miles an hour at least, and I can see even stronger winds because the pressure gradient really tightens up.
Yeah, there it is. You can see all these isobars here.
Yeah, there you go.
Pretty tight gradient for Friday night into Saturday, and then it kind of relaxes a little bit. Now, the first system, it's probably better if I show it on the wide view, because we've got, just like what we're seeing tonight, where you have this lead running it back. So you've got this lead system that comes into the east, and then the second main system going into the Great Lakes. It's kind of this 1-2 punch. Same thing I think is going to happen next week. We've got this lead system that comes in Sunday night into Monday morning, which will allow a cold high to build, and then you've got the follow-up system, which is going to be another big snowmaker in the west and in California, that moves east. And I'm still not 100% certain how this is going to play out, Joe. I mean, it really does seem to look like this is going to be another one of these lows that cuts to the Great Lakes, and even if we get a secondary to develop, it's not going to be enough. The upper pattern is just not favorable for storms for snow in our neck of the woods, at least in the Northeast.
Right, I agree with you. And the thing is also, I've already seen some, Facebook pages, other websites already promoting, the potential exists for a big snow event or a big winter storm Tuesday or Wednesday. You really can't say that, because our two best mid to long range models, the European and the GFS, are both contradicting each other to a degree. They're not really on the same page. One is even faster The European is bringing a system up to the Great Lakes,
right,
sweeping a cold front rapidly through here during Tuesday, and already we're in another cold air advection flow on Wednesday. Meanwhile, we're in a building ridge, according to GFS, with temperatures possibly rising back up into the 40s on Wednesday. So it's
unless you're the parallel GFS.
The parallel.
Did you see the parallel tonight?
I didn't get a chance, but
all right. So you haven't seen this. Okay, this is one of the most far-fetched runs I've seen, and I'm bringing it up because it's as soon as it hit, it was the chatter was instantaneous.
Right.
And I'll explain why I think it's far-fetched. But you ready?
Okay.
So we're at Monday night, Tuesday afternoon,
right.
Tuesday night, Wednesday 1 a.m. Wednesday, 7 a.m. Wednesday, 1 p.m. Wednesday, 7 p.m. Wednesday,
okay,
and then 1 a.m. Thursday, and back to 7 a.m. Thursday.
All right.
So, just to review, okay, all right. Now, here's the thing. In all seriousness, I think the big issue is when we set this up with these troughs and ridges. Okay, so we're through the weekend. All that energy that's coming into the west, Joe, and then there's northern stream energy. I want to go to the GFS first, which kind of handles this differently in terms of the look. But this to me looks like it makes much more sense. But basically, you've got this northern stream and southern stream system that comes in from the west coast. Now, the only way I think we could wind up with something here that's more of a snow event is if the southern system is weaker and somehow it undercuts this ridging in the east, and you get this system that just kind of slides along.
Right.
This is what the GFS did late yesterday afternoon, implied on the upper air.
Right.
Instead, today, the models seem to start to try and phase it with that northern system that comes out, and this takes a deepening primary up to the lakes, and it would match the pattern that we've been in anyway with these storms. Look at the one for tomorrow that's going up into the lakes.
Right.
I just think the parallel GFS model run is so amplified with the southern system as it moves across. I just think it's far-fetched given the overall scheme of things, where the trough is in the Rockies and in the west, and the ridge is mostly in the east. It's just not the way you would get a big snow around
And
here.
of course, if you've been watching the parallel GFS through this winter season, and now we're halfway through the winter, what the MO, the modus operandi, has been for the parallel GFS is, let's come up with something really wild, very intense, very robust and everything, and when we get within, let's say, 84 hours or less, all of a sudden it shrivels back and says, we didn't exactly mean it that way, and it pulls back on everything. And that, in a way, has been the MO for the European this winter as well.
Horrible. The word is horrible.
Yes.
The European in the day 7 to 9 day time frame this might be the sixth one this winter where it's put down a significant amount of snow for it, and let's assume it doesn't happen. This would be the sixth time that the model has predicted a big snow. And on a grander scale, Joe, in terms of all the long-range models, the fact remains that think of all the times in the last couple of months where there's been a storm, a snowstorm in the beyond the 7-day time frame.
Right.
Not a single one of them has played out. Not one.
Right.
Not really. Not one has played out.
Right.
So shows you the value of all that stuff in a pattern like this, where you've got so much. It's just such a mess in the Pacific. It's a mess over North America.
Again,
it's crazy.
The 84-hour rule for me, and if that be the case, it won't be until sometime this weekend that whatever is going to happen early next week will start coming into focus. Until then, we just have to sit and watch the mishmash. By the way, along with the European and the GFS, the Canadian model was totally el blando. I mean, it had hardly anything significance or substantial,
Yeah.
event. So, you just have to just lay back and see what happens. Well, based upon just overrunning the colder air that moves in during the weekend, Sunday night, I would agree that there may be a light snow event or at least some snow showers.
I think it could be like a coating to an inch or so.
Yeah.
Jason Kaplan about the Madden-Julian oscillation. Everybody's waiting for this Madden-Julian oscillation. That's tropical activity and the winds that oscillate in the tropical Pacific. Out in the Indian Ocean, way out to the east, and its impact on the weather downstream. In 8 phases. When it goes into phases 8 and 1, that's usually cold and snowy in the east. But I would point out, Jason, that too, this is maybe the 4th or 5th time in the last couple of months that the oscillation is supposed to go into this favorable phase 8 or phase 1, and it doesn't do it. It's in phase 7 and then goes into what they call the circle of death.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll bring up my analogy, which I just came up with on Monday. This winter so far has been like watching Sunday's Super Bowl game, where everybody has been sitting there in anticipation and waiting for something to happen, waiting for the explosion from one or both teams. And you know what, folks? Those of you who are real into dynamic meteorology and dynamic weather, you may be ending up sitting there waiting for your Madden-Julian oscillation, maybe waiting for your European to finally come through with the big storm. And by the time you take a look at the calendar, it might be in late March or early April, and say, what happened? The winter is all but gone. It may turn out to be that this year.
And by the way, because a few people are bringing up last year, okay? And let me just tell you the big difference. Last year at this time,
we were seeing the signs of blocking.
We were already seeing the signs of
toward the end of the month
of the splitting of the vortex,
right?
And that we could be going into the blocking into the longer haul. I got to tell you, I've seen, I've looked. The only thing I have noticed, and this is just something that's basically, in my view, part of the statistical noise, is that, well, every other run of the GFS shows blocking in the 13 to 16 day time frame. Okay, it's been doing that for the last 6 weeks.
Right.
It never gets beyond that.
Right.
So until I were to see that progress inside, say, at least inside day 10, and preferably inside day 7, I can't really take it seriously. So other than that, I'm kind of hard pressed to see how this is going to, wind up repeating like last year. I'm not seeing the same things that we saw at this time. And remember, the split happened in 9 days, so this was around the actual big polar vortex attack happened. I'm sorry, it didn't. Was around the weekend of President's Day weekend, so it was around the 15th, 16th. So that would be 9 days from now. There were already signs, major signs on the models that was going to happen. You've got nothing like that this time around. So I think the outcome this year is going to be a whole lot different. And I agree with you what you said.
And for the folks who are looking at the European, you're looking at the operational models. I like to look also at the ensemble. And Joe, the ensemble, not the 18Z, the update, but the 12Z from this morning. The ensemble all is screaming that it's, you might get a little bit of snow on Tuesday, but it's going to warm right up, change whatever we get to rain for Tuesday night into early Wednesday, and then a sharp cold front comes through, pushes everything out, and as the cold air comes funneling in, shuts all the precipitation off. So
Ron Pinelli, who I had a wonderful conversation with, because we were just talking about social media, snow weenies, and everything else, and he brings, we're talking about the Madden-Julian oscillation, and I think you make a very good point here with the fact that just like any of these, these wonderful indices, the EPO, the NAO, the PNA, the WPO, the SOI, the QBO, okay? And then now we have the MJO, the M&Ms. Exactly. All right. It's all fine and dandy to have all those things be in all the right spots. At the end of the day, it comes down to where is the ridge and where is the trough. you could have all those indices screaming at you. If the troughs and ridges are not in the right places, it doesn't mean squat. And I'm thinking that that is going to be the case this year. That, yeah, the MJO may certainly suggest if it gets into the right phase, and I'm not convinced that it will, but if it gets into the right phase, that, yeah, it would favor colder weather, but it doesn't do you any good if you still got a deep trough that's out in the western part of the United States and doesn't want to go away.
Right.
Or if the Pacific jet is still a problem. Or if the Atlantic jet, which is not really discussed very much, but the Atlantic jet has been a big problem.
Well, we said, on Monday night, it looked like the Atlantic fire hose, not the Pacific.
Yeah, so there's just too many things. There's just too many things from the standpoint of that, for the area that we cover. There's just too many things this winter that are wrong, and for a snowy winter, and they've played themselves out. Everything seems to be rhyming. We're in the early part of February. I'm the Joe. You know me. I'm a cheerleader up to the end. It's very, very difficult for me to find positive things to when I say positive, I mean for snow lovers anyway. It's very difficult for me at this point to see anything positive going forward.
Do you ever notice that when we have like extremes, or when we have like what we had last year, that the winter that follows, the very next winter, is something that's totally opposite, like on the other side of the spectrum this year as opposed to last year? And again, we were getting somewhat excited and somewhat intrigued at this time last year, talking about what might be coming down the road for later February into March. We certainly saw that it was very interesting, but at this point in time, as Joe just mentioned, it really doesn't appear that that is going to be the case, at least in the immediate future.
Ethan Kerr, the imaginary blocking signals 2 weeks out are like the imaginary hurricanes model 2 weeks in the future in the summertime. 99% of the time they don't happen. Bingo.
Right.
That's it. You've said it all.
Right.
All right, speaking of which, coming up on the top of the hour, so we both have to go.
Oh, yes,
I'm feeling a little subdued tonight. It's just, I don't know if it's the weather or just my mood in general, just kind of tired.
Same here. Just like there's nothing really. I suppose we should actually be happy about this in a way, because it doesn't, when you get these big storms and everybody here comes running at you and asking questions, and then the build-up and the stress as to what's going to happen for the next run.
Yeah, I know.
It's kind of nice to have a nice little quiet spell here.
Right, and by the way, if we do wind up with something between now and the end of February, the beginning of March, okay, it doesn't in any way make up for what hasn't happened since December, okay?
Well, let's put it this way. We'd have to have something along the lines of the 78 storm or the blizzard of 1888.
Twice.
Twice?
You'd have to have the 78 storm twice, in my opinion, to make it to
Well, at least in Central Park, yeah. Central Park is at what? A grand total of 6.5 or 7 inches?
7.6.3, 7.4.
And we had a trace of snow in December, and 1.1 in January.
And 6.3 in November, so that's 7.4.
There you go.
There are some folks out there in social media land that are actually not only doubling down, but now they're tripling down about the next 4 or 5 weeks. All I can say is, good luck. All right? All right, so I'm at the top of the hour at FiOS One News, Long Island and New Jersey.
And for those of you who are fortunate to have Verizon as your cable provider, you will see me in the Hudson Valley on FiOS One News, Lower Hudson Valley.
All right, see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for being here tonight.
Good night.